Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and for any of you who are new to this podcast, it's all built on a Quincy Jones quote that goes something like, "Imagine what a harmonious world it would be if everyone shared a little of what they're good at." So I chat with musicians, those with an interest in music, to get them to share what they are good at. For this episode, I am joined by Avishai Darash. Avishai's new album, Between Hope and Despair, is out now. And what you're listening to is Echo Chamber. Avishai is based in Amsterdam, but his music blends styles from all around the world, from North African traditional music, from Western classical music, American jazz, Israeli folk, and he's got a very interesting story to tell, so I'm looking forward to our conversation. I hope you enjoy listening into our chat. Welcome to Harmonious World, Avishai Darash. It's really nice to talk to you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You kindly sent me a link to Between Hope and Despair. That's a fantastic album.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that.
When did it come out?
It came out the 22nd of March.
Right.
One day after the equinox. You know, it's always when releasing an album, it's like, oh, it's almost like a baby being born, you know. It's just like, oh, just come out and let's see what you're going to do in the world.
It's fascinating. And I'm really grateful to our mutual friend, Ruth Fisher, who pointed me in your direction, because otherwise I think I'd perhaps never have heard of you, because you're in Amsterdam and, I guess you come over here from time to time, but haven't seen you before.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because the thing is that I was kind of like, let's say in the last 8 years, I was very much busy with orchestra work. Meaning that,
Okay.
yeah, meaning that like I had to put my kind of like my solo career on the sidelines, and I was very much busy with writing massive amounts of arrangements, composing for orchestra, and it started with Andalusian Orchestra in Amsterdam in 2017, and then later I got a promotion actually to become the artistic director of the Marmouche Orchestra. It was a competing orchestra, and I was very much busy with the whole like mixing of Western music together with Eastern music, and I did what a lot of people or a lot of musicians do when they find this like level of comfort or like job security. And I kind of like just like sat in the couch of comfort and kind of forgot actually that I am a solo artist. And the reason I'm saying it's funny that you say it is because I hear it now from a lot of people of like, how come I never heard of you? Like, I mean, you have such, what you're doing is like high level and all that stuff, and like all of a sudden, like, where are you in the zeitgeist? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think that this is exactly that, is that because I put my career for so long on the sidelines, but at the same time, I got like such a like a massive amount of skill in that sense of like being able to write for multiple instruments, being able to lead, let's say like multifaceted rehearsals of different uh, different sections of the orchestra, being able to think of concepts, being able to develop things on like such a, let's say, with so much finesse, that I needed that to be able to take it for my own career. And then, funny enough, I left the orchestra on 7th of October. Coincidentally, it's not connected to the 7th of October that we all know.
No.
And then I found myself in a situation where it feels like I need to rebuild everything from scratch, but at the same time, because I have such a let's say, I don't want to use the word impressive, but affluent catalog, it was easier to break into the industry again as a solo artist.
Yeah.
And of course I needed that album. That's very important because if you don't have a product nowadays, something to keep you relevant, it's not going to work.
Well, yeah, and I think people need to kind of know where you sit. It's not in terms of putting you in a box, but just kind of knowing what to expect. And I think an album does that.
Yeah, positioning. Very,
Yeah,
very, very simple positioning. You know, it's funny because when I left the orchestra, I think, of course, everybody wants to give you advice, but
of course.
never carry the responsibility of the outcome of that advice. It's yeah, you know, you have to position yourself still with orchestras, and you have to stay with Andalusian music, and you have to stay with the world music, and you have to stay with that, this and that. And I was like, listen, I did this to study, I did this to learn, I did this, but I'm a jazz dude. You know, I'm an Israeli jazz guy that loves playing piano and loves actually composing for smaller ensembles. It was a great run, and I enjoyed it, and I did, you know, I it's actually funny. This is album number 18 that I produced. So it's like I got really skilled with studio work, and I got skilled with everything that is connected to like conceptualizing um let's say abstract concepts into a product. I got really good in that. But the positioning in the end that I want is a touring pianist, you know.
Right. It's interesting you say that. You're talking about you can learn skills from other bits that you can then bring into your own work. I spent a day last week at Abbey Road in
Nice.
London, just sitting in the booth, but I was kind of involved in the production process of a classical album, actually, a flute concerto. It's absolutely stunning music.
Wow.
But actually, although I wasn't officially, I wasn't officially kind of there, it gave me such a skill in terms of sitting, reading the score and going, oh, okay, that clarinet, that could have been a bit louder. Or there was a point
Yeah,
where we were talking about the bassoon wasn't very loud. And it was like, well, should we bring that up a bit? And it was that sort of that detail that, I mean, I'm not going to write a flute concerto. I'm not going to write anything for an orchestra, but actually that gives you a sense of how different instruments fit together and how you talk
exactly.
about those things.
Exactly. And I think that that had such a huge impact with affecting how I wrote this album, you know, the Between
Right.
Hope and Despair, because I wrote for so many instruments that actually what we do as arrangers or composers of multiple instruments is we work with frequencies. That's what we do. I see it more actually like almost on the level of physics, you know, like actual science to it. Because you have the instrument that has the, let's say, limitations of it, and it has to work together with another instrument that has its limitations, but you have to create a new sound of their combination together. And how do you work within these limitations to find that freedom? So my limitations in that sense for the quartet were I have a piano where I can just kind of orchestrate everything. I have a trumpet, I have a bass, and I have drums. So actually, what are the frequencies that I'm working with? And for let's say a less skilled arranger, it's very much like I need to play chords with the piano, and the bass needs to play this kind of low end, and the trumpet needs to play this. But actually, because of the skill that I got from working with orchestras, the whole let's say how I spread the harmony and what I write for the trumpet in comparison to the melody that the piano is playing, it was almost like second nature for me to think more broad about the composition and the
Right.
arrangement than actually just like let me just write a melody and chords to it and put them together. Also, when I spoke to Cheyenne, the drummer, who is also the engineer of this record, he said that it's always the playing and the arrangement. It's not the mixing that makes the album sound like it is. It's really like the decisions of the composer and the decisions of the band in that sense to make it sound the way it sounds. A good mix can make things come out or can swallow certain things, but it's not going to predetermine if the album is going to sound great or not. That's really the musical, the material.
Yeah.
And what you're saying basically about that is that all of a sudden, like, if I correct me if I'm wrong, like seeing in Abbey Road is that um, music is being perceived differently than just like from your standpoint of the instrumentalists.
Yeah,
You see it in a more
definitely.
broader sense of sound and frequencies and textures.
Yeah, and it needs both, doesn't it? It needs the individuals, it needs the bassoonist to be playing what he needs to play, but
Exactly.
it also needs everybody else to be going kind of actually that needs to come out, or that needs
Yeah.
to, whatever it is, the
And
subtleties
that's
of that.
and that's where a musical director needs to come in because
Yeah,
we're like we're talking right now and I have a stream of thought that I'm sharing with you and the musical director is more the observer or the listener of this conversation, and the musical director can be like, you can come a little bit later, you can come this. The timing wasn't perfect, even though that person, individual, thinks I'm playing it perfectly what is written. They can't fathom the complexity of the wholeness that they're a part of.
yeah,
So because of that, that's why people ask me like, yeah, but what does a conductor do? What does a musical
right.
director do? They just move their hands, right? Actually, no, they are the number one observer and listener of the music, and they have the responsibility of leading the entire group of people towards one goal, you know?
Yeah. It sounds like this is a metaphor for lots of things in life.
For sure, for sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. Very much. It's
right.
it's a company, it's like running a
Yeah,
company. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. No, it's brilliant. Um, can you, for the sake of my listeners, explain a little bit about your background and how you've ended up in Amsterdam?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Israel, 1986, December 28th, 1986. I was born in Israel. I was born, let's say, not into specifically a musical family. There was a little bit of music in our family. My brother was playing piano, he was playing some Beethoven, and it was important for my parents that that we have some musical background. Um, and for me, it was like, we grew up listening to classical music. We grew up, I mean, Israeli music also as a whole is very rich music, like the traditional Israeli music that came from Yoni Rechter, Mati Kaspi, Shlomo Idov, Yudit Ravitz, all these artists. It's very, very rich harmonically and melodically. And I grew up listening to this music. When I was 11, I went to Carmiel, that's in the north of Israel, see what my cousin is doing. My cousin is a psychedelic trance producer. I was just very curious to know what is psychedelic trance. I was 11, huh? So for
Right.
me, these words psychedelic and trance, they didn't mean anything. They were just abstract concepts. We went up to the north and he just played me a track of his, and I was absolutely blown away that music can create that feeling. Not necessarily um, what this music has become in connection to the rave culture. I had no idea about that. I just listened to it, I think, from such a pure place. And I will never forget, it's like it was yesterday for me. I was just standing in the studio and hearing like all the layers of sounds going up and then the drop and the kick coming in with the bass line. And I was just standing there absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe it.
Right.
Um, Fast forward a couple of years, I was harassing my cousin quite a lot about this type of music because I wanted to, I wanted to chase that dragon, wanted to chase that feeling again. And I started saving up money. And we have a thing in Israel called bar mitzvah. So like, it's like your rite of passage for adulthood. And I got some money from the guests that came. I took all that money and I invested it in like a little home studio, so I can start, um, so I could just start like producing as soon as possible. And I had like a drum machine, I had like a computer, and I had Cubase, and I started to just put things together. And actually, from that moment on, I started to understand the concept of arranging, the concept of multi-layering um, sounds together, multi-layering, actually, like I said, frequencies in the beginning. Um, my cousin helped me quite a lot with understanding mixing also, understanding like like you said about the bassoon or the clarinet, what needs to be higher, what needs to be lower, what is the ground, let's say the background sound that we're hearing, how to make the mix full, how to make it thinner. And then my mom, funny enough, she had enough with the boom, boom, boom. She had absolutely enough with it. And she said, I can't hear this thing anymore because it's very repetitive music for her. Um, and she said, you have to take piano lessons. You have to. And I was very reluctant in the beginning because there is this stigma of piano where if you don't start when you're 7, you can never play it on a high
Yeah.
level or be professional. Never. It will never work. Um, and I was struggling with that. I was struggling with that. At the same time that this is happening, I realized that the psychedelic trance bubble is starting to pop for me because I didn't understand the connection that this music has, the integral relationship it has with the rave culture. So I would go to parties and I wouldn't understand why people behave like this.
Right.
I was an innocent kid. I was a child, 14, 15. I knew nothing. I was just a teenager, like standing in this party and seeing someone just stomping their leg for 10 hours. And I was just, I don't understand what is happening here. And and it started to actually kind of create aversion with me that I was like, I didn't want to go to these places and I just wanted to listen to the music like in a pure way. And because I like the energy and I like the production of it and the effect that it has on the body, my body. So forward, I'm I'm negotiating with my mom about really starting piano or not, and she got me a teacher without even asking me. And it was very like, I was 15 and was very like, I didn't want to practice. I didn't see any point of it. It seemed like such a long path. Like you have um, to pay and sacrifice so much to just be able to just play normally, like even just a few simple melodies and chords that it seemed like a futile attempt in making music while I'm just going to the computer and it's like quickly.
Right.
But at the same time, I see that I'm hitting walls. I'm hitting walls in the sense of that I'm doing it's what I'm doing sounds the same. It repeats itself. I can't really break free from it. So I need to start learning the theory of music. So because of that, I'll never forget a friend of mine called me who was a drummer, and he said, there's like a regional, like a megama. Megama is a course outside of school that you can take.
Okay.
You can take that and you can study basically, and it can be like it's an elective. It can be added to your school studies. And I was playing like 3 months, and I was just like, I was playing actually because the teacher kind of just told me, okay, what do you want to play? And I said, I want to play Moonlight Sonata, like because I could just put the fingers in the right place and just like play with them. And I went to do the audition for this regional class, and they accepted me. And the apparently the teacher was very impressed. I mean, for me, it was really like I had nothing to lose and nothing to gain. That's what I thought. I just thought, okay, I'll do it, and let's see what happens. And that's where it started to open the door for me to jazz, to more serious classical music, to world music. I'm putting in quotations because I don't. It's just a marketing concept, the world music, and um, then I remember that when I started slowly to get into jazz, I went to a concert, and that's when the concert completely flipped for me. My perception of practicing is that mm, I listened to there was a concert of Omer Avital, the bass player, Omri Mor, the pianist, Shachar Chaziza, the drummer, and Jay Hernandez, I think it was his name, the saxophone player. And I was I was just sitting there like just glued to my seat, and I couldn't believe that how they communicated with each other. I didn't understand
Right.
how is it possible that they know exactly where to go in the arrangement. Mind you, that I had some experience with arranging in that moment, and so I could understand the, let's say, the timeline of music, but I couldn't understand how four people that are not shouting towards each other, we're gonna go into this moment, we're gonna
Right.
go,
Yeah.
that it's kind of like the spontaneous, it's almost like magic, it seemed to me. Then from that moment on, I was taken. That's it. The electronic music was completely put to the side. I didn't care about it anymore, and all I wanted was to play like this.
Right.
And I started practicing like 7 hours a day. And I started, and that was during high school. So we're talking, I'm 16. Um, and I didn't care about friendships. I didn't care about going out. I didn't care about weekends of friends going out to the city center in Jerusalem and getting drunk. I didn't care about that. All I wanted was to achieve that fluency with the piano, that knowledge. I wanted to be able to play like this. I started to take lessons. I started to harass even people. I'm very intense, so I only more I would call him like like twice a week to just ask him for like, hey, but could we like meet up, and could you like show me stuff, and could we like and then the rest is history. I got into the Jerusalem Academy pretty quickly. In the Benchumi. Benchumi is like you have like half classical, half jazz in it. Um, after I was there for 2 years, I studied with Itai Rosenbaum and Erez Bernoy, rest in peace. And and then afterwards I went to New York to hone my skills. New York was very, very it influenced me a lot with my perception of music because um, what happens to it, it's like a trajectory that a lot of Israeli musicians have that they they like, oh man, I really want to do that jazz thing. Let me go to New York. And then you go to New York and it's like, wow, that's really different than what I thought. The difference with me was that I didn't go to any system or I didn't have any curriculum, so I just went to the city. I do not advise this to young musicians. I was 21, very young, you know.
Yeah.
And I kind of got lost there with distractions and people and partying and this. But at the same time, what it influenced me dearly in regards to the music to understand what is relevant actually for the market and what do people want. After a year that I was in New York, I went to Israel. I was there for a few months, regrouped myself, and then I got accepted to Amsterdam, the conservatory, and I moved there in 2010, and I've been in the Netherlands since 2010. And funny that you talk about positioning is that from 2012, I got contacted by the oud player Muhammad Haddaf, and he asked me to join his quartet. He's a great oud virtuoso, great, very very serious oud virtuoso, and um, I joined his quartet, and we toured quite a lot from 2012 until 2017, and there basically it was like my path into the world music, or let's say the combination of Eastern music with Western music, because afterwards I got contacted by the Andalusian Orchestra to join them as an arranger and pianist for the projects from 2017 until mid 2019, from late 2019, sorry, and from late 2019 until October the 7th, 2023, I was the artistic director of the Marmusha Orchestra. And there, that was really that like my school, you can say, of anything that has to do with dealing with high pressure, um, writing for multiple instruments, running multiple projects at the same time, dealing with funding, dealing with communicating with 17 different cultures, different type of languages that I need to master. Like I speak Dutch, English, and Hebrew, as you can, the English also.
Yeah.
I had to get my English like perfect. I had to get my Dutch perfect. I had to get all these things. So it was really my school. At the same time, the team and me wrote in 3 years 160 orchestral arrangements.
Wow.
That is a massive amount of arrangements.
Yeah.
Massive. Yeah. And now, I made the album, and actually, funny enough, as maybe it seems, I was just talking about with my wife, it seems like I just left something really good, that was like really cushioned, and like we call it we call it in Dutch warm bad, like a warm bath of
Okay.
like stability,
Comfort. Yeah.
a comfort. I knew that I could do this for another 10 years, and probably I would look back and be like, what have I actually done? Because I'm driving a Ferrari, which is like really well oiled and everything, but at some point I realized this is not my car.
Yeah.
This is not the car that I created for myself.
Right.
And I prefer to drive like a little Beetle for a moment,
Yeah.
and build it and have it my own.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, don't get me wrong, like the loss of status was and still is very heavy on my consciousness in that sense, because it's like from being, let's say, sought after and important, and I'm putting in quotations, I became all of a sudden just another musician that has a project,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden people didn't need my attention and didn't send me their half-baked projects and stuff like this, They
Yeah.
actually they wanted to, but that's the thing, it's a means to an end. So I was a means to an end for other people. They were a means to an end for me, and it's something that in terms of like my morality, I couldn't deal with that anymore. And I prefer to
Yeah.
do something really that is mine.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. In actual fact, I've made a whole load of notes about things that I wanted to ask you, and you've answered all of those. So I didn't need to say anything. So that's brilliant.
Sure,
Um, let's take a little break. I want to play an extract from Midnight Express.
sure.
I really like that track because it's got an intricacy of rhythm. When did you write that?
So, the entire album, funny enough, was written in just a few weeks because, like I said, I left the orchestra 7th of October, and unless you've been living under a rock, and maybe some listeners don't know what happened the 7th of October,
Well,
for
yeah.
us, for the Jewish people, and for Israel, something very terrible happened that led actually, quite a huge backlash from the world, and like outspurs of anti-Semitism and all that stuff. And for me, as the 7th of October came, and I left the orchestra, but I had already the date booked for the studio in Madrid to go and record the
Ah,
album. Yeah, I didn't. I was just like, okay, I'm finishing this chapter. Boom, on to the next. All good. But because of what happened on 7th of October, I was completely incapacitated, and I was completely. I couldn't actually do anything. um, I thought that 2 months would be enough for me to just sit and compose the album. But a week went by, another week, and another week, and another week, and I can't get myself to do it. I'm like dragging myself to write it while I have like another theater production that is like looming in the background that I need to also compose. But mind you, I am used to this high octane pressure need to deliver. So it was still in my body, it was still in my system. So I kind of gathered myself around November, and I started to just write the music. And it
Wow.
came from a very honest place, actually. That's why it's called Between Hope and Despair, because these are the two emotions that I was constantly dealing with. And Midnight Express, in that sense, it's not connected to to the movie or to the book.
No.
That was quite famous about the hash heist
Yeah.
in Turkey. It's connected more to the fact that that song kind of brought me out of that, funk that I was in. It was the last one that I wrote, funny enough.
Oh,
It was really like the last one. I just brought it to the studio, like, here you go, guys, here it is. And I, funny enough, I don't know if it's like really present in that, like the scale that I used, it's the same. It's just permutations of that scale constantly. It's a scale that has both minor and major at the same time because that melody is, it has really that like the minor third and the major third at the same time in it.
okay.
And that's why it sounds like very, let's say, mysterious in that sense and like intricate.
Yeah.
But if you actually listen to it, it's the same pattern. Ba-da-dee-da-da-dum, da-da-dee-da-da-dum, constantly. The
Yeah.
same. And the thing is, with me at least, when I compose something, once I have the first door opening, it's just like it's almost like the doors are being opened by themselves, and then I need to kind of like double check that I'm not repeating some stuff, and um, I'm not like returning into same concepts or like a concept is overstretched. And that, like I said, I have to give that credit to all the orchestras. That's really from orchestra work, like composing so much that it's almost like there is science behind it. Okay, this is that, this part is this long, and then I'm gonna go to the next part, and then I have to have this part return. I can have some change happening there. So it's really like it happens the process of let's say creativity, which is kind of like a it's aloof. What is creativity? And
Yeah.
you have all these like creativity gurus that are just absolutely full of BS, that are selling their books, like Rick Rubin and all these people, that it's
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, dude, no. It's work, it's work, and it's sweat, and it's sacrifice. That's what it
Yeah.
is. It's not
Yeah.
about having a big beard and funny and funky glasses and telling people you are the creation and this. No, the great composers that we actually did had such an impact on Western culture or Eastern culture were so prolific that they had their sound. They wrote massive amounts of music that basically such a massive amount of music that created already their patterns. So it's not like, oh, there's this a romantic perception of creativity coming from above and gracing you. I can tell you, for instance, you know who Brad Mehldau is, right?
Yeah, of course.
One of the
Yeah.
greatest improvisers of the 20th, 21st century, 20th century.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be able to meet him personally and to spend quite a lot of hours at the piano with him.
Wow.
And one thing that he told me is that he writes almost everything. He writes all of his ideas, like meaning that um, he told me, you're an improvising musician. You need to sit and write your ideas. And then when you go to the stage, you can let them go. But they're
Okay.
already a part of your system. So he played me a lot of like unpublished pieces of his that he just writes for himself. And I was like, wow, that's him. That's that's
Wow.
that's Brad. And he said,
Yeah.
with all the small seconds and like the the transfer of like melody from left hand to right hand, the counterpoint, how he looks at it, it's all written. And then he has his vocabulary, and then when he comes to the stage, he's basically honing it, like he's
Right.
perfecting it and perfecting and perfecting it. And I got a chance also to hang out for like almost 2 weeks with Jorge Rossi, and he told me the same. They would go on tour. They would have like a 20 date stretch, and and he would like you would hear through the tour how his solos are similar, but they're becoming cleaner and cleaner and cleaner to the point of like the same structure, and we're going there. And then that's why, like, when we hear it as listeners, we hear like an end product of something and we think, wow, this trio is unbelievable. How do they communicate? It's because they are communicating similar ideas to each other
Right.
day in and day out, and then they can catch each other on that sense. Um, and because of that, there is like coherency there, and that's why also I think in that album Between Hope and Despair, like correct me if I'm wrong, it's just very coherent, everything that's happening
Oh,
there.
yeah.
It's not like you're not listening to some Frankenstein.
No, not at all. No,
Yeah,
no, no. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And
sure.
that's really interesting because when you're improvising, I guess, for all of us, it comes from a different place. But I'd never thought about writing it down and kind of learning it and honing it.
Yeah,
But that's really interesting.
because think about, like, you're doing this podcast right now, and how many times you ask similar questions to musicians,
Yeah,
and then you corrected and you understood, okay, and the more you do it, you understand more like of a global pattern that is happening there, and that global pattern affects every other type of creation that you're going to do. So it's not, there is this like thing of how to practice, what to practice, but it's more about you need to practice consistently towards something, and
yeah,
then it reveals itself, you know? And I think that that encounter with Brad was really like, that just changed everything for me. I was really like, oh, wow. Like, because of course it's connected to his brand of making, he's like melancholic, and like he's,
yeah,
mysterious, and then you think, oh, it's all coming from like above God, and he's like a stream of consciousness. It's complete and utter nonsense. It's a lot of, like, you play piano in this level from hard work. It's
yeah,
not, it's
yeah,
not sitting, and also that's a thing that he showed me, like the classical pieces that he was working on at that time was a lot of Brahms, and it made like a lot of sense also because of the polyphony that he's working on. So I'm like really in that thing of also put yourself out there as young musicians, and then just go to your people, the heroes, let's say, and tell them like, hey, can I show you some of the stuff I'm working on? And if you get rejected, welcome to the business. And if you get accepted,
yeah,
all right. So, they're going to show you some stuff and you're going to learn. But if you get rejected, it means absolutely nothing. Like, it's
right.
not rejection. If a musician cannot deal with rejection, don't do this business, because you are going to be rejected so much.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Avishai, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I've got so many more questions, but I think we're going to have to do another
Sure,
episode.
sure,
And
sure, no
actually,
problem.
next time you're in the UK, let's do a live one. Let's sit down and chat face to face.
For sure, for sure. I would love to. I would love to. I would love to. Thank you so much, Hillary, for having me. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation with Avishai Darash. What you're listening to now is The Seventh, which is also taken from Avishai's album Between Hope and Despair. Please remember you can find reviews of albums and live gigs on the blog at hillaryseabrook.blogger.com. And I hope you enjoy listening to Harmonious World, and please get in touch with any comments you might have. You can find me on social media, you can leave a comment on here. And until the next episode, please share what you are good at. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.